Hey folks, it's Kelly. I'm the lifestyle engineer. We're going to be working on some building blocks to your life today. And I have a special guest with me today. Her name is Heather. She is one of the partners at Confidence with Cabaret. And I've known her for a while. So I've had several conversations with her. You guys are going to love her. So Heather, take it away. Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored to be on this podcast, first of all, Kelly, because I adore Lifestyle Engineer and all that it represents, made by you.
It's been a long road.
It has, and now the podcast is here, and you get to share this. This is so important to be sharing building blocks to wider and wider audiences, and I'm just so happy that you have this.
I was actually kind of shocked with the number of people, that approached me, and it's like, well, you're talking about these advanced concepts, but I don't understand how I get there. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's back it down and back it up a notch and just be like, okay, let's start at the beginning and let's then do the steps. So it's like, okay, now that I understood, it was like, all right, let's do this way. So today we're going to start with confidence. And most people, when they're talking about needing to build confidence, we know that they are probably hitting that almost rock bottom stage where they're like, I don't have confidence. I don't have any sort of self-worth feeling. And when they're there, what do they need to do?
Yeah, I so can relate to that. So I've had, I kind of have never publicly hit bottom. So, and there might be people here who can resonate with this, where you appear to be just, so good, everything's going great. I've had a leadership training and coaching business for over 25 years now, and I had it down pat. I knew exactly how to be. I had all of this confidence. I ran these I never used microphones. I held the space for, sometimes days in conferences. And I could carry that on into my personal life, where everybody would say, oh, you have to come to this because it'd be so fun if you were there. And I had to be this fun person. And there were a couple of people that I said, I don't want to be fun today. And they'd be like, oh, don't be ridiculous. It's so much better when you're, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I consider that smiling depression, where I would be, everybody would assume I was the most confident person in the world. And then but I felt extremely lonely in that room. And I think until we're ready to kind of dive into some of that vulnerability and process some of the things that have happened for us and to us, and process some of the beliefs that we've internalized, until we do that work, we're never free from that. If that's our thing and we're, good at faking it, or if, for other people, they just won't go. I was just having a conversation before this with somebody who just won't go to anything unless they're given no notice, because as soon as they start thinking about it, that freaks them out, and then they won't go. So they're missing out on lots of opportunities in life. And I think, either one of those, which tends to come from our introverted or extroverted preferences, it can cause us to really live our life inauthentically. And so when we talk about confidence, it's not the appearance of confidence, it's genuine confidence.
And it should be. I mean, anything you do in your life, it should be a genuine, this is what I actually want to do. Because you start going even a little bit into that whole people pleasing thing, and that, yep, I'm going to show up because somebody else wants me there. And that's not living authentically either. I mean, if you're going to do something, that something should be, hell yes, I'm going to do it. Not, yeah. I'm going to do it because you told me to.
Yeah, or not, I'm not going to do it because I want you to like me. I have 4 children. They're grown up, and the one that's the most like me is exactly the same. And it makes me crazy watching him go through this, because I know there's going to be a pain point when he's going to hit this. I can't do everything because I want to be liked. My dad is the same. We passed on these patterns all the way through. And I think, when we're living to please others, well, then how does that work? Like, first of all, we don't even know ourselves. So that was the first step. I had to get to know myself. I'm still learning that. And that was one of the blessings of COVID. I had a lot of bad stuff I say bad stuff in inverted commas. I had a lot of stuff that other people would consider bad in 2019. I lost my late husband who had Alzheimer's. I had a very serious car accident. I had to move house because I was in financial ruin from stuff he'd done during his dementia that we didn't know about. And so I had lots of stuff that happened. I was just still didn't have the all clear for my breast cancer, like lots of stuff that people would consider bad, and it is bad. It is. I'm not trying to diminish it, but I have worked through and processed that. And if COVID hadn't have happened, because I was just getting my business back on track, and then COVID happened. And then if I hadn't have had that time where I had to be isolated, I'm an extrovert, so that was purgatory. If I hadn't have had that time to process and to really feel the feelings and release things and examine beliefs, then I would have gone through the rest of my life faking it. I'm just sure of it. Sometimes we have to, as you say, hit that rock bottom, wherever that is.
Oh,
And
for everybody,
then,
that's different, but
yeah, for sure. But then, you can stay down there, right? Like you can stay where this is happening to me. And I was in there for a long time. Like, this is happening. Why is this all happening to me? And then more stuff would happen to me because I was attracting that to happen to me, because it's all energy. And then all of a sudden, when I started to say, okay, what is the lesson here? What are the beliefs behind this? What am I assuming here? Why do I need, for example, for everybody to like me? Why do I, and letting go of some of those things, because I don't need everybody to like me anymore. Now, it's kind of like me if you want to like me, but only if you want to. Like, I don't need that.
yeah, I can remember. I mean, you're talking about people not liking. When I realized that I did not need everybody to like me, was kind of like this out of left field. Baseball references, I'm like known for them, I think. But it was kind of out of left field for me. I mean, I remember being out someplace and I was with a group of friends and somebody wanted me to do something. I don't remember exactly what it was because this was a few years ago. And I was like, but I don't want to do that. So I'm just not going to. I'm going to, they all wanted to go do it. And I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to go find something else to do. It's fine. And somebody's like, well, you're no fun anymore. And I'm like, well, I don't, sorry. And I left.
Not cool. You're no fun anymore. That's literally saying you're not doing what I want you to do, and that makes me feel unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. And I'm just
Wow.
like, I feel bad about that, but I don't want to do it. And like I said, I don't remember what it was. It was something, probably fairly inconsequential, but it was like, whatever. And since I live in Wisconsin, it was probably, we were in one bar and they were probably going to another bar and I'm going, no, I'm tired, I'm going home,
Yeah. Yeah. And you instilling those boundaries for yourself, but also imposing them for other people. When we do that, people will push back if they're not used to our boundaries.
Oh,
that's a huge part of it. And we get a new opportunity now, like post-COVID, as we're sort of coming out. I'm in Canada right now. It's like a whole different world with the regulations. Like a whole in the UK, everybody's like, yeah, whatever, yeah. But we get to, but we're still whatever the pace of that returning to whatever the new normal will be, we get to define our own boundaries. And now is a really good time because we've had a lot of reset time to come out and go, you know what? I realize I don't like to do bar crawling. I'll come for a drink with you, but then I'm going home. Or, I'll give you 2 hours and then I'm going home.
right. And that's, probably a really good thing. But I know a lot of other people, they kind of had the opposite reaction to COVID of I'm forced to spend all this time alone. So instead of facing who I am going to learn to bake bread, or I'm going to learn to do whatever. And there's nothing wrong with picking up a new hobby. I mean, people who are recovering and making those boundaries and who have done things like cut somebody who refuses to respect the boundaries out of their lives and just said, nope, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm always telling them, okay, well, get busy so that you're not worried about what they're doing. But at the other hand, you also have to process. I mean, it's a balancing act between keeping yourself busy and, processing the emotions. You can't do one without the other.
Oh, I kept myself busy for decades. And when I say busy, I had my own business. I actually had 3 businesses, but they were all under one group. And so I had 22 trainers running schools mentoring programs and self-esteem for teenagers. I had my own corporate training staff. I had my coaching client. It was ridiculous how much stuff I was doing. And I was managing a children's rugby team in the community, which I didn't even have children in because they were older. And I was doing, my aerial and cabaret practice, and I was doing at least 14 hours of that a week. And I was, and I would fall into bed and crash every day. And I didn't like to have any space, to the point where people would kind of go, what are you going to do when you have time off at Christmas or whatever? And I'd say, I'm not, I've got to be doing something else. And what I found out was, well, 2 things. I found out that I was doing all of those things because I was avoiding feeling. I didn't want to accept the question, how do I feel? So if I kept busy all the time, then I never had to address that, because how I felt was crappy.
Right. But again, when you are more worried about what somebody else feels than what you feel, you also need to have a certain level of busyness to untrain the thought of what are they thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the second thing that I learned from that, is that whole kind of, what other people think or feel is none of my business. Like, that's their thing, right? So I have my own self-limiting beliefs. You have your own self-limiting beliefs. And what we do is we impose our self-limiting beliefs onto other people. So now if I impose that onto you, we spend a lot of time together, and I'm now sort of saying, oh, you need to come out with me, and you need to stay out, and you need to do all these things. Then you end up limited by your own beliefs and mine. And so when I figured that out, I can still remember, it wasn't that many months ago, where I went, wait, like, I understand self-limiting beliefs, right? Like, I've worked with this for decades, but I'm being limited by other people's self-limiting beliefs. And that's when I went, no, there's my line. Yeah, that's not happening. No, I'm just not.
It's interesting that when you hang with like the same group of people or the same type of people, how easily you adapt to their self-limiting beliefs and kind of adopt them as your own. I mean, and then once you get away from them and you kind of go, oh, wait, why did I do that? And I think part of that, and this is theory, but I think part of that comes from just the way that our brains evolved, is that, we evolved to live in a very tribal situation. So we were supposed to adopt the tribal think, but that's not the case in society today. It's just too broad.
It was necessary for our survival. And obviously, we have the negativity bias built in, and that helped us to, run from fear and danger and,
The tiger.
But it also, you're right about the getting along, and we had to fit in and belonging.
Yeah.
But that is survival mode, right? We don't have to live in survival mode today.
We don't, but often we do. We find ourselves relying on the instinct rather than feeling our way through it and then going, oh, that's not needed. How do I want to proceed? How do I want to present myself? How do I want to build my life? And going, oh, wait, there's choices to this. Okay. So a lot of times we start with, okay, level 1, this is what we do. And we get to level 2 and we're like, oh, wait, there's another level of this. Oh, okay, wait a minute. Because when you talk about healing, you talk about doing that stuff. I mean, it's cyclic. It never, you kind of come back to it, but on a different plane, on a different level, a different perspective of the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, that all of these things that we're describing around doing and, getting along and being busy, and those are very masculine energy. And I didn't realize that by staying in the doing, my corporate world was predominantly male, You know, I was very much in tech. I was very much in, you know, pharmaceuticals clients, you know, accountancy clients, like, you know, those kind of environments where it's more male dominated. And so you might find a few females and some HR business partners, and then, but
I
very,
come
very
from the
patient.
automotive world, so
Yeah,
yes.
exactly, exactly. What I did, and what's funny is my biggest selling product for decades was around personality preferences, and I talked a lot about energies, but I never talked about feminine and masculine energies. So I'm going to really struggle to go back to the corporate world now without talking about feminine energy, because I have discovered mine. And that's what Cabaret gave to me, because Cabaret started off as a very masculine energy. It was very in your face, you know, I'm going to share my story, it's going to be loud. And now I'm much more around the expression of feelings. I'm much more about creativity. I'm much more about intuition. And those are feminine energies that are oftentimes diminished. You know, we're not really supposed to do those things. That's like, there's no crying in baseball. See, there you go. It's a nice little baseball
In
reference.
baseball reference and a
There
movie
you go.
reference too. Yay, 2 for 1.
But, you know, and we're not supposed to be emotional. We're not supposed to be, but we are emotional people. And when we shut that down and we cut ourselves off from that, then how do we connect with who we are? And I don't care whether you're male identifying, female identifying, non-binary. It's not really about gender. It's about those energies. We all have masculine and feminine energy in us. And I'm now to the point where I can wake up some days and I'll just be like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm feeling, I need to process that. I need to create. What's my intuition telling me? And it's screaming. And then I'm playing with that. And I say this literally to my business partners, I didn't get anything done today. Right?
That whole we're pushed to be always productive.
Exactly. And this can go on for days or weeks sometimes. And then all of a sudden, with all of this creativity that's come out and all of this stuff that's been processed and I'm lighter, then I'll wake up some mornings and go, uh-oh, I'm in masculine again. Let's do, because I'm ready, right? I'm recharged and I'm focused and I know, and then I'm doing the things that matter and not doing the things just to do the things.
Right. And I totally get that, because now that I'm not in the corporate world anymore, I totally have that in my life where there are days where it's like, there's a light calendar day and I'm just not feeling like being into the whole productive push thing. I want to be productive. I want to be the creative, and I want to, I want to sit back and I want to curl up with the dogs and read a little book and, just let my mind wander, which sometimes when I read, it's read page, because, well, you get involved in the story. And sometimes it's just read a page, sit back, relax, sit with the dogs, think about what you've just read. It's kind of very flowy. It's
Yeah.
not a to-do list. It's not a checklist. Not to say that I don't have one some days, but there are just those days where it's like, you just have to sit back and go, yeah, no, hands off. I just can't.
And I'm right now, because I'm visiting my dad here in Canada. I'm trying to spend time with him because my mom passed away this year. So this is the first, like each day is the first time that we've had one of these days. And so it's quite emotional. There's lots of things to process. And I recognize that I'm also like filling up with, oh, I've got to go to this webinar and I've got to do this live and I've got to do, and so I've set myself times, because I do need to do those things and I want to do those things. But I've set myself times where I've said, okay, up until, let's say lunchtime, I'll do those things. And I was on a webinar at 7:00 this morning, and I've, done all kinds of different things this morning. But then this afternoon, that's time for my dad and I to just walk and heal. And so I've literally had to schedule it in, because I can feel myself going, avoiding the feelings of being in this place where my mom was, and, all those things that are difficult, but I'm allowing myself time to do that. And it's not ideal that we schedule it. It's just the way it has to be, because, I have to share Wi-Fi here and all kinds of stuff, because my dad lives in the seniors home. And so it's working for me temporarily, but when I go home, I'll just let that happen. And I'll just kind of go, okay, today's a a jet lag day, or today's a book day, or, and I'm looking forward to that, because I think as women, especially, not only, but especially women, will be very much about doing, especially if you've got young children around. And I know you often have children, and then there's lots of have tos, right? Because you got to get stuff
There,
done.
well, I mean, in some ways it's kind of, we're fortunate because they are my future stepchildren. So it's not like it's not like when my own children were little and I was a stay-at-home mom and they were on top of me all the time. So with future stepchildren, the relationship is very different than when they're your own children. So they're here usually every other weekend, and then sometimes extra days around holidays, during the summer, sometimes a little bit extra time there. But for the most part, they do reside with their mom. So it's like when I have that ability to just kind of schedule in that, okay, we're just going to be all in the feminine and the mothering time, and we just put all the time into being with them because it's such a limited amount of time that we have them. So it's a little different than when you're a mom and you're home all the time and you're like, I've got my to-do list and I have to take care of kids and I have to take care of a house, and there's a lot of and to it.
Yeah. And this is where the whole self-care thing comes in. Is, I'm diving deep into the self-care, into the various pillars of self-care, because very often when we're focusing on one part, we're not focusing on something else. And it's, I was describing it as like whack-a-mole. Something comes up and then you deal with that, and then something else comes up, and there's never that balance. And a lot of people think self-care is having the time to read a book or have a bubble bath or whatever, but it isn't. It's about really, like, what do you need to really feel fulfilled and to really recharge, in order for you to sustain all of those things that you need to do if you've got a full-time family, or even a part-time family, or even a social life, or whatever, a work life, business, whatever it is.
Oh yeah.
You need to be able to recharge those things.
Yeah, that not giving from an empty cup. You have to be able to have that time away and just be like, okay, here I'm going to do. And for everybody it's different. I mean, for me, it's kind of odd because I'm very social when I have that downtime. But if I don't get that downtime of sit with the dogs, read the book, do, just quiet activity, even if it's just sit and stare into space, I don't function well with other people. I don't play well with others at that point. So that it's that whole thing of what actually does recharge you. And okay, those are my examples, but if you don't know what those are, you are never giving yourself self-care because you have no idea what to do.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And I think, if you, for me, it's connecting. For me, it's like quiet time is like purgatory. And I build in time to do that now, which I never used to do, because I know that I'm avoiding something if I'm trying not to have quiet time.
see, yeah, for me, quiet time is like it. So then I usually have to like schedule in and kind of, I don't want to say force myself out of my shell, but I mean, just be like, okay, if we're going to be social, I'm going to schedule it because at least then I can prepare myself to go do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really that self-awareness that's important. When you're at rock bottom, and I'm going to guess there are some people quite triggered by this conversation in terms of, yeah, but I'm at rock bottom. Like, it's all very well saying get to know yourself and get to nurture yourself. If you're at rock bottom, you're not ready to do that. And if you're there, then just acknowledging those feelings, just finding gratitude. And I struggled with this because I was like, for years I made a list of 3 things I'm happy with, or 3 things I feel good about, or 3 things I'm grateful about, but it wasn't genuine. It was like, okay, I'm supposed to do this, there we go, I've written that in my journal. But really digging into that, like, I would say, if you're sitting at rock bottom, write a list of things that piss you off, like write them all down, get it all out there, and then find within that things that you're grateful for, or choices that I mean, for me, like, there have been some crappy times where just having the choice was the thing I was grateful for. And for example, when my husband became very sick, or my late husband, I could have left, right? I could have dumped him into a home. I could have left him with my children. I could have left him to the social care. I had lots of choices. They were all crappy choices. And I chose to stay. So that is powerful in itself. So when I'm writing down like, and I have to put up with this and I have to clean this and I have to do this all the time, and all these things, it's like, yes, but I've chosen that. Like there is grace in that. There is gratitude in that I even have the capacity to be able to make that choice, that I don't have to leave it all to my children to deal with, that I do, and so if you can make your list of things that piss you off and then find some sort of grace within that, that starts to move the needle a little bit up the hill towards, and it's uphill if you've gone down, then, and when we're talking about confidence, it's never about like you get up there and then you stay there. It's just that when you get momentum, the dips don't dip so low and you don't stay down there so long. But it's just all tools.
Yeah. I mean, we tend to think of like, getting to where you're confident that it's this magical land of unicorns and rainbows. And once you're there, you stay there. That's not how it works.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, you're talking about the whole thing about the list of things that was being pissed off. Is that there were days, I mean, because you have to remember in 2016, I was just gone through a divorce. I had gotten 6 weeks after that into an life-altering accident. My ex, who just moved out of my house, had to move back in. It was horrible. And I was certainly not grateful for any of it. It was awful. And it's like, so struggling sometimes to come up with even one thing to feel somewhat grateful for is very difficult. So when people say, well, I can't think of anything to be grateful for. Okay, well, fine. Well, even, you said list off the things that piss you off. And I'm usually like, you know what? If you have one thing in your day that didn't make you angry, write that down. Okay. Because at least it didn't make you angry. You don't have to be grateful for it, but just one thing that didn't make you angry today.
Yeah.
Because you have to start somewhere. And sometimes neutral is the best place to go.
Yeah, and my co-pioneer and I, we actually still do this, but when COVID started and it hit us both in very different ways, but very deeply, and we both lost a lot of stuff, in not least of which was from being an artist and losing all your venues, and then I've lost all my corporate gigs and all of my income. We started off by congratulating each other, like, well done for getting a good night's sleep, well done for waking up and getting some things done that you wanted to check off your list, or well done for having a slow start to your morning. And we still do this. I had a message literally this morning, kind of well done for getting some sleep, because last night was the first night's sleep I'd had since I got here a week ago. So and we just start with those little things. And
well done for putting pants on today.
Yeah,
there were those days.
There were
those days.
Well done for having a shower, well done for getting some sunshine in the back garden. There were those days, and we still do that because we have to remember those things are important, and we have to, acknowledge that we need to have grace around those things, And so I don't need to hear, well done for getting a good night's sleep, and I don't need to say it, but it's just a reminder of there are good things happening all the time. And that makes us more resilient for when it's not so great.
It pulls the focus off of that everything is always shit all the time, compared to, that life is 50-50. I mean, granted, it's not always half and half every day. I mean, some days are going to be worse than others. Some days are going to be awesome. It's the balance of it throughout the whole life. But within the crap, there's always something to look forward to. And then and people who are like, okay, I'm sitting in the crap and I really don't feel that way, just look, just slow your brain down and look. I promise it's there. But then, then on those really great days, it's like, okay, we always remember the really great things, and we don't remember the little things that went wrong either. So nobody ever has a really great day and say, I want to look for the crappy stuff, but it's a good reminder that even those really great days, I'm sure if you looked at it close enough, you'd be like, oh yeah, that went wrong and it was crappy.
Yeah. But isn't it interesting how we can have a great day and then like something goes wrong and we'll go, oh, that ruined the day. And we do this with dieting as well, right? Like we did so well in the morning, and then we had a cookie at lunchtime, and then we're like, oh, the day's ruined. And then the whole day's ruined.
At lunch.
And then, right. And then it's like, oh, okay, the whole day's ruined now. I've ruined it all. It's like, It didn't have to be. You still had the morning. You still have the rest of the day ahead of you, and so we often, that's our negativity bias right there.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when we can focus on what's going well, when we can focus on, what we should celebrate. And this because I'm constantly saying, did you celebrate the thing you did? Like, you spent a long time figuring that out. You spent a long time getting your head, and then it didn't work, but you've learned something, or you've gotten further, or it did work, or it's
Right.
we're so bad at celebrating the good things.
We are horrible at it, and we're really good at wallowing in our own crap.
Yeah,
We're really
absolutely,
good.
absolutely. Yeah, and if you do that enough, you'll end up with imposter syndrome if you haven't already got it, right? So then that means that we internalize the crappy stuff, we don't internalize the good stuff, and then so somebody says, "Oh, you look really good today," and you're like, "No, I don't." No, and or in your head maybe you're thinking it, and we don't internalize those good things.
I still have those days. There are days where I'm like, there are days I could put on sweatpants and a t-shirt and like no makeup, don't do my hair and feel great. And then there's days where it doesn't matter what I put on and I'll still feel like, yep, I do not look good.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't.
absolutely. And there's as long as we recognize those highs and lows, then we don't have to stay in the low and wallow and go further and further into that victim mode, because that's way harder to get out of.
Oh yeah, it is.
So little things like, if you're in the stage of just getting up, putting sweatpants, and you've done that, then congratulations. Like, celebrate that and go, yeah, okay, that feels a bit better. I had a shower today, or whatever it is.
I think there's an article I was reading about a woman who wrote it, who had gone through like extreme depression, and she's like, yep, I can remember that I could not get myself to take a shower because I couldn't stand that long, so I would go and sit in the bottom of my shower because
Yeah,
I couldn't bring myself to stand. And that's like, you know what, you got in your shower, that's like amazing. Just because society says you have to have this to-do list done before like 9 a.m. or whatever imaginary time it is, it's like, you don't, it doesn't matter. Just if you put one foot in front of the other and it's just an inch, that inch is less that you have to go tomorrow.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And like, I think a lot of it, when we start to get a little bit momentum, then you can start to notice things like say, for example, if 9 people told you look great today, and then one person says, that's not a great color on you, or what have you done to your hair? Which one are you going to internalize? The 9 people who said you look great today, or the one person who made some sort of a criticism?
So it's usually the one that the criticism is usually what sticks out. And that's the
Yeah,
one that because we are automatically biased to want to look for that. So you have to train yourself to look for all the good things. There was some famous psychologist, and I think it was Young, maybe, don't quote me on who said it, but that it takes 30 compliments to get over one criticism. It's like that. That's how unbalanced our brain focuses.
it's when we understand how things work, when we understand where some of our beliefs come from and give those back to their rightful owners, when we start to establish some boundaries, when we start to get some momentum from being grateful and congratulating ourselves and internalizing the good things, that's when we can start to talk about words like confidence.
Yes, and then you start this is where I'm saying that, okay, we started here at the bottom, and then this is our next step up, is that here now we're going to talk about that these are the things you start focusing on. Once you have this down pat, you start doing this, and it's a
Yeah,
step up. And I make this huge hand motion, but step ups may not be that big, it may be that big,
yeah,
like an inch.
absolutely, absolutely. So you can do things that will make you appear more confident. You can, I mean, in my world is cabaret, so you can go and perform, but there are, most performers have some form of imposter syndrome, or some form of some bad habits of self criticism. And I think so it's fine to be able to do the facade and the appearance of But what we're talking about is getting really deeper into that work and letting yourself feel those things. And if that means falling back down into the valley a little bit, then you've got to have some skills, like we're talking about some techniques to take those baby steps. And, it really does work. But if I'd have heard this when I was at my rock bottom, I would have
Oh,
gone, that's great for Kelly and Heather.
oh yeah.
But
No,
not me.
I remember being at that rock bottom, having somebody say you have to be nicer to you because you're the only you ever have. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, there's only one you. That's
Seriously.
true, but I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, it's like, but it doesn't compute inside your head. So when somebody, does come to me and say that, okay, this is how bad it is, it's like, I believe you. I have been there. I do know how to help you get out of it. You
Yeah.
just need to lay faith in me and let me take your hand and lead you. And then usually somebody else comes along and says, well, if you say this mantra, it's going to work. Well, okay, the whole time that you say that mantra, it's going to work. But then once you forget it, you're back to it downhill slide. It's that ski slope at that point. You're just back to where you started. Then you're like, well, the mantra didn't work. Nope, nothing's going to work.
Yeah, and then it proved like then the negative voice has ammunition and evidence,
Oh,
which is not good. Don't give that part of your head. Don't give the imposter voice your the bragging rights of being right. But affirmations don't work unless they're said with conviction, unless there's energy coming from your body, unless you really can display that conviction. And I sometimes that's a fake it till you make it thing. I think that's one of the most misquoted things. But if you can really kind of feel that in your body and believe in that, then the affirmations will be great. If you say the word, I'm beautiful, I'm lucky, money's coming to me, and there's nothing, then you're not putting out that energy, and it's not resonating in your bones, then it won't work.
no, they don't work when it doesn't resonate. And when most people are at that beginning stage of, holy crap, how did I get here? I need to look at doing something. And then somebody comes along with this affirmation. It's like, oh, there's my quick fix.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stick. Like, you might be able to have conviction behind it, or what appears to be conviction behind it, for a day or two, maybe even a week. And then something happens and you slide, and then you're like, oh, that didn't work because you didn't have anything else underneath it to support it.
Exactly. This is like, we understand this intellectually with our physical body, right? Like, I could take pills to mask the symptoms, or I could get to the root cause and fix it. And yet we don't do that with our own mental health.
No, a lot of that has to do with the stigma around mental health.
Yes.
I mean, I grew up in a household that probably mental health was like the most open thing ever, because my dad's a psychologist. Well, he was a cop turned psychologist. And then my stepmom is a licensed social worker. So, I mean, this type of stuff that we're talking about was like dinner conversation. And then when I got out in the real world and realized that not everybody grew up this way, I'm like, oh, never mind. I also really resisted it because it was dinner conversation. It was like the family conversation. So, I mean, I really resisted doing a lot of that stuff when I left home, and kind of resisted it for quite a few years. Even in college, I mean, college, when I did, like, I didn't go to college till my 30s. So did college, and they were like, oh, when you took this test, you really should be like a psychiatrist or a psychologist or something along those lines. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go do computers. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then,
I love, though, that you have that balance, because you can use that as such a strong analogy. So many of us are kind of like, we're so hung up on the how, and it's like, like even setting up this podcast, if we get into like the how do I do this, and how do I do that, and how do I find this, and then you'll never do it, right? If you can put that aside. And I love that you have the engineering background, because it's like you start from one block at a time.
it is. And well, as well as I do, that I talked about the podcast for like almost a year before I actually did anything. And I really needed a lot of encouragement to do it, because there was this part of me that was stuck in this belief, because you hear it, that technology kind of surpasses you, which is not true, because technology today is so much user friendly than the technology that I grew up with.
Yeah.
So technology didn't surpass me. It became easier.
Yeah.
So when it came time to do the podcast, because it was something new, I'm like, oh, technology is going to have surpassed me. So here we're talking about those self-limiting beliefs. Well, that was one of them. And it was just, sometimes you just have to get in there and do it. And I mean, yeah, there was like a learning curve to it of, well, here, do this, and do this. And sometimes I'd read the steps and kind of skim over one or miss it somehow and be like, okay, that didn't work. Now what do I need to do? And I would complain that it would be frustrating. And then I would go back and do it again. But because
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to voice the frustration and be just like, okay, I'm frustrated. Somebody just hear me before I can move on.
Yes, otherwise I'll quit. And that for a lot of us, that's what we do. Not that you would have done that because we wouldn't let you, but you know, how long did I give? What did I give you? Like 4 weeks? I was like, okay, you have 30 days to start a podcast.
Yeah, it was 4 weeks. And we extended that a little bit because I had another
Yeah.
event going on earlier in that 30-day period of that, hey, you know what? This is taking a lot of brain power, a lot of my physical time. Doing something with that during that like 2-week period, it was like there was not going to be much done. So it's like we needed to extend that a little bit.
Yeah.
But let's be reasonable on my time constraints.
And deadlines are completely flexible with those kind of things. It's just like it gives us a guidance of kind of, okay, so I'm working to this, and it can be motivating if it starts to feel like the deadlines are oppressive and they're squashing our creativity, or we're doing things because we're supposed to, not because we want to, or those kind of things are not good deadlines. And I think, a lot of us experience that in the corporate world where we're working to deadlines of the company or the team or the manager that is a requirement, and we don't believe in and subscribe to them.
Right. I mean, there's those, but then there's the deadlines that you don't like that are like kind of within a project that you really feel passionate about. I mean, like getting this started was something that I really wanted to do, but the tech part, again, it was like, okay, and getting that set up, once I kind of got into it and kind of got the rhythm, it kind of like expanded really quickly, but it was the starting it was very hard and slow motion, even though getting that done was fundamental to even be able to do this part.
Yeah. The other thing is that comes up for me in what you're talking about is that, and you were very good at this, but I'm not, which is about asking for or accepting help. So I will always try and figure it out. I might spend a whole weekend doing something that somebody else could have told me in 10 minutes. I don't want to say to people, I'm failing, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling, can I just get a little bit of encouragement here or whatever? I do that now, but it's not in my nature because my imposter voice is pretty loud about that, and my least favorite compliment that I get all the time is, you're so strong. And I can't tell you how much that annoys me. It's meant as a compliment. I understand that it's coming from a good place, but I don't like it because I'm not strong. If I was strong, I would ask for help, especially, when my husband passed away and I didn't understand things. Is the worst time to learn that you just don't understand any of that. And I had no family to help me. So I had to navigate it all. And even to the point where they were saying, who are your funeral directors? And I was saying, I don't know. And they said, well, we can't tell you anything about that. You'll have to go find out. And I was like, well, how do I find out? It was crazy. And and it's like the worst day of your life. And then you've got to figure out, stuff you don't know. And I wouldn't ask for help. And people would say, do you need some help with that? And I'd go, nope, I'm good. And then I would be like, I'm dying here. And, I understand that, when we're talking about a podcast, it's not a life-threatening situation, but, you were so good about sort of saying, I don't know how to do this. Does anyone know how to do this? And people would give you advice and you go away and look at it and then you just make your own way. And, that is so important.
Part of it, because see, I was never good at asking for help at all. But trust me, having an accident that puts you in a wheelchair, it makes you really good at asking for help because you don't have a choice. Because to get up and go to the bathroom at first, I could not do that on my own. I mean, you literally have to learn to accept help. And it's not always a bad situation. I mean, being in a wheelchair and suddenly being there is obviously a horrible situation to be in. But you know what? Comparatively, asking for help on a podcast or asking for technical help, that's not so hard. It's a whole lot
No.
harder to ask a total stranger that, hey, I need to get up and go to the bathroom. And then they have to be in there with you. That is the most uncomfortable situation I can think of to be in. And if you can survive that, trust me, asking for help for a podcast, it's not a big deal. That so, when you're talking about asking for help when you're because I don't think you've ever been in a situation where it's like, I have no choice, I have to take help. And then
Yeah,
I'll learn the hard way.
I when yeah, I was when I had to move house and I had to, a friend of mine who's an accountant said, I'll take the day off work and we'll go through and forensically find out where all this money is, and it wasn't there. And I had to ask for help to do all of that. And that is huge shame issues for me because it's all kinds of stuff around money beliefs, and having to have explained to somebody else those things, and then of course getting in a car accident. I was incapacitated anyway, and having my son help was brutal, because there's so much discomfort for him as well. I think it's interesting because my dad was when I was a baby, was in a car accident, and was like in the hospital for months and months and months, and broken back and broken jaw and broken everything. And so he went through that, and then he got back on his feet. And because he never addressed the beliefs behind that, he just kind of accepted that time and then got back. He's now in that situation at 87 in a senior's place where he has to have someone in the flat. He's lucky he has an apartment. He has to have somebody in the apartment while he has a shower, and he feels deep shame around that. They don't even have to be in the shower with him, and he feels deep shame around that. So it's interesting because he's gone back to all those old patterns that he's accepted help lots of times, but he's never addressed the belief behind it that's enabled him to be free of that.
And I don't know. I mean, at some level, I had to have addressed that whole belief of help is okay. But I mean, I can tell you that because I spent like 3 months in a wheelchair. I bet you the first month it was, just fighting and struggling against, you have to have somebody do this with you. And it's like, that was the worst. I mean, it's like, it took a while to get to, well, you have to accept it. And then how okay are you with it? And again, it's like that whole, how comfortable are you asking for help? And when you're forced into those situations where it's my survival depends on asking for help, you learn to get kind of comfortable with it pretty quick, because nobody's ever programmed to die. We're all programmed to struggle to live.
Absolutely. And it might not have been such a strong imposter voice for you. It is my deepest one, in that it's kind of going, do you don't want to appear weak? You can figure it out, and I'll struggle rather than accept help. And I think I have to override that with a stronger voice that goes, no, we're not going to spend hours trying to figure this out when somebody could help us in 10 minutes. We're not doing that anymore. So I have to have that voice because it is so deeply ingrained for me. And I think when you do that work and you can find those alternative voices, that's when you can start to control your imposter voice and say, no, thanks very much for that warning, imposter voice, because that's what it's there, is to keep us alive. Thanks very much for that. I got this. I'm going to ask for help.
Yeah. Somebody described it as, is this an imaginary fear or a real fear?
Yeah.
An actual tiger going to eat you? That's kind of real. Knowing you have certain physical limitations and climb a ladder, that's probably a real fear. Because there is real risk of injury in there. Asking for help and being afraid that somebody is going to make fun of you, or that it's going to make you feel, look weak, or it's going to make you whatever it is, probably not so much real.
No, it's interesting because that's the same thing with going on stage. I do burlesque, and so there's a whole kind of a thing of, nobody's going to want to see this because I'm of a certain age, or I'm not as strong, or I'm not as fit, or I'm not as flexible, or all these kind of things come up of like, and then once you can release that, then you go, it doesn't matter. Like, they didn't have to buy a ticket, they don't have to enjoy every moment. It's fine. and you can let some of that go. But
I,
that was years of struggle to get to that point, because that felt, when I first went to that very first burlesque taster, that felt like a tiger was going to eat me.
oh yeah, no, I totally get it. I laugh because I totally get it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I had stage fright from a child on. Like, I mean, like I was very smart and I would always end up testing into like these school academic teams. But then when it came to the academic competition that was on stage and in front of people, I couldn't answer a damn question. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. Okay. I mean, I would literally physically freeze. Then, and as an adult, my children were little, and I was like, okay, you know what? I want to do something because I'm feeling, kind of eh, not as productive. See the whole, I got to be productive in society thing coming through, but I'm just not feeling very productive. So I discovered that, hey, you can get ordained and you can build a business to performing weddings. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. Yeah, okay. All that stage fright, like the first several weddings I did, kind of came back, and everybody's like, you're really great to talk to in person, you're very personable. And then when it comes to your wedding, it was so wooden. It was the right words, but there was no emotion, no feeling. So, I mean, it took a long time to break that down. I still do it. I still do it today, but it's like, but at
But
first
well
it
done
was
for
horrible.
continuing. 'Cause a lot of people would have stopped.
At that point, I already had like weddings on the book. I had to figure it out because people had booked me. They had paid me. I had to figure it out.
Beautiful. That's good.
There was
That's a
no
good thing.
option at that point.
Well, there was, because you could have not done it. You could have given them your money back. You could have just no showed. You could have run away and hid. There were options. There
Oh,
were.
well, in my brain, there was no option. It was figure it out
Mhm.
because they already paid you. You have to do
Yeah,
it.
that's fantastic that you see it that way.
That was my thing. It's like, and speaking of, you have to do it that way. My fiance and I got in an argument this morning about, because he had said something to somebody else, and I'm like, all right, you've already made that commitment. You need to go do that. I don't know, what it is, because he was like, oh, well, we're just going to change it. We're going to go do this. No, no, you already made that commitment. Go do it. And then we can go do this. So apparently I'm very commitment oriented.
Right. And that will be one of your values. That will be, and that's actually what I've raised my children with as well. Every September they would want to join rugby. And I would say, this goes on until May. If you sign up, you're committing to a team till May, right? And I've kind of, instilled that in them, that you don't let the side down, kind of thing. And so, it is a value statement, and it's a choice that we make. Our values change, but you obviously have that in there around, you committed. So that's what that means. And that's been good, because that's seen you through that time of, being an ordained minister and showing up and doing the thing,
Doing the
even
thing and
though
going,
you've got stage fright.
and it was horrible. It was horrible. Obviously it's much better today, but still it was just awful. It was like, nope, nope.
But it
I
never
can't.
would have been better today if you didn't push through that.
Yeah, that still does not make me want to go out on stage and do something like burlesque. It doesn't. I love going to the shows. I mean, I haven't seen them advertised, because there used to be a show around here that they performed burlesque and cabaret and, did the whole shebang, and it was fantastic. I haven't seen them advertised lately, so I don't know if they broke up because of COVID or what exactly happened, but it's kind of
Yeah, they
sad.
might not be back yet. I would say, I mean, cabarets, I always say cabaret is for everybody. Cabaret and aerial, particularly pole, is the most empowering female environment I have ever been in anywhere, hands down. Not even close with anything else. Because it is for everybody, and it is so empowering. And yeah, there are some studios where, there'd be mean girls and whatever, and you just don't go to those. But I don't have any time for all that kind of crap. And I am at least 20 years older than everybody else in my studio, right? Easily. So, they always say like you're the least mature person in the room, and that's because I don't I get to be me, and I get to express myself however I want, and so does everybody else. And as long as I'm not offending or upsetting somebody else, or encroaching on their space, then it's fine. But I think that's the whole thing, is that we get to express ourselves, and by expressing myself physically, that gave me a form of exercise, but it also gave me a way of kind of releasing a lot of stuff, like just doing mirror work. You go to a dance studio, right? There's mirrors everywhere.
Oh,
It's
yes.
terrible, but it's
It's
not terrible.
terrible.
It's
It's not
there because
necessarily
it's
terrible.
so important for us
It's
to
kind of
have
like a
feedback.
gym too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But it's meant to have feedback, it's meant, it's such a beautiful way. So I would say to anybody, if you're kind of like, if you enjoy the idea of some sort of dance or whatever, then do it. Like, just do it. You don't have to perform on a stage. It doesn't matter. Like, some of the studios I go to, everybody performs. You don't have to. You can do it. You can not do it. But being able to, and making that choice of like, I don't want to perform on a stage, or I do, then it's so empowering. I think that with dance, it makes us take up space, and it makes us express ourselves without the voices in our head going, don't do that and don't do this. That's why I don't really pay that much attention to the mirror, because then my voices in my head kick in, because
Yeah.
we're just getting to explore. It's like children on a playground. They don't sit and go, how do I look on this roundabout, or how do I look on this slide? They're much more about like, look at me, way, and they're expressing. And so for me, that dance is pure play. And can I just say, I cannot stress this enough. I have no rhythm. Like, I can't dance normally. Dancing at a wedding is my version of hell. And people are like, but you're a paid dancer. I'm like, no, this is my version of hell, because I have no rhythm, and I never remember choreography. So I'm the worst person so I can remember my own a little bit, but but not well. And if I'm trying to do somebody else's choreography, I'm always the worst person in the room. I'm always freestyling. So if
So,
I can
okay.
do that and be paid to do that, anybody can dance.
So then you're my kind of dancer, because I have no idea what I'm doing. My fiance is a DJ, and he's like, "Oh yeah, well, you've done this enough. You can go out and do, like this shuffle. I don't even remember the names of them. So, this shuffle or this dance, or all the little line dances." And I'm like, "Nope, I don't remember them." I will go out and I will try to follow somebody else, but I inevitably end up going the wrong direction and running
Me
into
too.
somebody one way or the other. And I'm like, eventually it's just like, yeah, it just is what it is. And I
I've been in Zumba classes where I've been put in my own line because I'm crashing into too many people and everybody's going the other way. And they've been like, okay, why don't you have your own line? Right. And then you can go whichever way you feel you need to go.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
kidding. And it's still
I,
fun because I'm like, oh, good. Now I can leap and I can, eh, line dancing is horrendous if you don't remember choreography.
nope, nope. I do not remember. I do not even remember the names of the dances most of the time. That is part of the whole living with the TBI and the reduced memory issue. Because if it's not important, my brain's like, "Yep, I don't need it. Throw it out."
Yeah. Yeah. But what's great is, I mean, and you could do this in your own living room, right? Just put on a piece of music. If you've got a little tiny space, and a bit
Oh
of
no.
music, you
Yeah.
can move and let your body move. Like, I do a lot of workshops with people where, we sort of say, okay, so we're going to start with our shoulders, right? We're not watching each other at all, because nobody wants that. And so we start, I know. So we start with our shoulders, and also to say, okay, so when the music starts, I want you to just move your shoulders, right? Just move your shoulder. And that's always, so now you've got some sort of instruction which occupies that voice in your head. So it's, oh, I'm moving my shoulders, and I'm not saying bad stuff because I'm thinking moving my shoulders, right? And then once you're doing that with your body, then you let it go wherever it wants to go. So for you, it might go into your head. For me, it might go into my waist or into my feet, and you let that energy flow wherever you want it to go. And you have to stop as soon as your brain starts kicking in, going, oh, move your feet. It's like, no, the brain has to shut up. And your body can, it just is so much fun. And now I do that on stage.
See, if I could get paid to do that, I'd probably be okay.
Mhm.
But I've always associated dance with, the formal dance class and learning all these moves and yada yada yada. And it's like, put me in a club where I can do whatever I want. Nobody pays attention. I'm good. Somebody
Yeah.
says, "Oh, that's not an official dance move," and I'm like, I don't remember any. That's fine.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to say this because then I know we'll be here like all day.
Oh, yeah, we will be. Sorry.
I know. I love this. I love this. Okay. So Bob Fosse, probably one of the most famous choreographers and dancers and so on. If you watch any old kind of movies, or you like Cabaret with Liza Minnelli, or so many musicals are Bob Fosse or Bob Fosse style. Right. So a few of the criteria. First of all, he did a lot of hat work. So when you're doing Bob Fosse stuff, you have a hat. Right.
Okay.
He had that because he was hiding his baldness.
Oh.
Okay. Another thing, another characteristic about Bob Fosse stuff is gloves. Right. So you'd learn glove stuff or you'd wear gloves or whatever. That's because he didn't like his hands.
Oh.
Another thing is a huge amount about posture and your back. That's because he had a small curvature of his spine, and he hunched forward, and he was so conscious of it, he had to learn to put his shoulders back, and he had to really concentrate on that posture. And so it's very like upright. And that was because of his own physical limitations that he was trying to hide because of massive imposter syndrome. And when he went too bald to hide all of those kind of things, he stopped performing, right? When he could no longer hide his baldness from a hat. He just didn't perform anymore. So what I'm saying is that what you see in other people, and then you compare yourself and go, I can't do that. You're not supposed to have to do that. You get to, like, there's no like what's a real dance move and what's not a dance move. Right? Like if you saw my cabaret, there's no dance moves in there. There's just me moving. And of course, with being cabaret, then we have a story and a persona, and we're portraying or messaging something with our using our body. So there's usually some sort of a narrative that we're telling, right? So, but you don't have to do that. I lots of times just put on music and just like twirl around my living room, roll around on the floor, and then I stop as soon as my brain kicks in. That's my version of mindfulness. For me, that's what works, right? And then I'll stop and I go, no, this is not your show, mind. This is my body. Okay, so how does my body want to work? And how does it want to roll over? Does it want to lay on the sofa? Does it want to kick a leg up? What do I want to do?
Yeah, mine often wants to lay on the sofa.
I do. And sometimes I do that in the workshops. I'm like, we'll come back and we'll be like, okay, so how did everybody find that starting with the shoulders, workshop? And then everybody will get really profound. And I'll be like, yeah, I just laid on the sofa because that's what felt good. That's my shoulders wanted to go to the sofa. And I went there and I just laid there and I just spread out. And that's all I did for 3 minutes.
Yeah. I could do that probably for longer than 3 minutes, but
it's fun. And then eventually maybe your hand will want to start moving, or maybe your leg will want to kick up, or maybe whatever,
Right.
And that's where cabaret is for everybody. What I mean by that is you could be a paid cabaret performer in a wheelchair. You could be a paid cabaret performer with any physical limitation. And by that, I mean even, or mental limitation, because a lot of it is mental.
Oh. Most of any kind of performance is mental, and just getting kind of out of your own way and just understanding that voice in your head, well, it doesn't have as much power as you want to give it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, or it doesn't get to. And that's why, I combine all my corporate stuff with my cabaret stuff and kind of went, okay, hold on a second here. We can do some mindset stuff. We can uncover some of the beliefs, and then we get in and be like who we really are. And that is so freeing, because as you said, then we don't have to be limited by things that are just simply fears where we're not being eaten by a tiger. I refuse to not do something unless I'm going to be eaten by a tiger. And even then I try and figure out how could I do part of it.
Yeah, no, tigers are bad, but other than that, yeah, we probably can figure out a way around to most things.
Yeah.
There's usually a workaround.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm constantly in dance classes where they say, don't do it like that, do it like this. And I'm like, why? Who says?
Oh, the rules people. Yeah.
The rules people.
Yeah. See, and I know that I'm like half and half, because being an engineer, that is part of being an engineer, is that there are rules to things. But I mean, because like if you're going to build something and you put the structure in wrong, it could collapse. So I mean, there's certain rules that make sense.
That's a tiger eating moment.
That's a tiger rule. But then, we've also got to learn that, well, there's also, well, who says that you have to stand in the shower? Well, why can't you sit?
Right.
Who says that you have to put, and the dish in the dish, this is probably because it's like my thing, is that the dishes have to go in the dishwasher a very certain way. And if Darren does it wrong, I like correct it. I don't say anything to him. I just go fix it. But, but really, who made that rule? I mean, there really is no way that's quote unquote proper. If the dishes go in dirty and they come out clean, does it matter?
No, and my late husband used to have that rule about the dishwasher, to the point where nobody would load the dishwasher. When he passed away, my children didn't know how to load a dishwasher. So there was actually a problem with having that rule, because there are consequences to having those sometimes that we don't even see.
Yeah, no, no. I let Jared's kids load the dishwasher,
Nice.
and then when they're not looking, I change it.
I mean, it's
That's
not a
my own
tiger eating
control
moment.
freak stuff. So if I'm going to be a control freak someplace, silently doing it at the dishwasher is probably my safest place.
Yeah, and it's not a tiger moment. It's fine. It's fine.
No.
But you also let them have the creativity to be able to load it how they want to load it.
No, and sometimes they ask, and I'll be like, "Well, plates go here," and they go in this way, and so if they ask, I will give instructions according to my own little thing. I don't know what to call it, my thing, and if they don't ask, it's like, well, you know what? It made it to the dishwasher, and I can move it around so I can get other stuff in there. I think my biggest thing is just using space efficiently and trying to cram as much stuff as I can in there, because the more I get in the dishwasher, the less I have to hand wash.
Yes, and that's what a lot of the stuff that I do with my coaching clients is about intention, right? Like, what's your intention? If your intention is to be, to make sure that the dishes get washed, and to make sure that it's economical, and, as many get washed as possible, and all of those kind of things, then that's a good intention. But if your intention is just like, this is how I fold a sweater for the drawer, and so everybody must fold in this way, that it's not rational, right? As long as it's folded. I mean, I have a 25-year-old that would argue that being on the floor, or his floor is as valid as the empty wardrobe that has no clothes in it. But
I have a 22-year-old like that. Yes.
yeah, and that's fine, because that's not my intention is to control him to fold things and do it how I do it. That's not a good intention, because he gets to have his own way. But if it's to be more economical with the dishwasher, make sure everything gets washed, all those kind of things, that's a good intention. So checking in with your intentions is a really good idea.
Yeah. No, I've learned to let go of a lot of things, especially, again, it goes back to, I spent so much time in a wheelchair and couldn't do things. It's like, does it really matter how you put the clothes in the washing machine? As long as they come out clean, do I care?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
not really. Was I upset that I had pink socks at one point when they should have been white? Yes, but they still kept my feet warm.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
was I happy about them necessarily being pink? Not really, but it is what it is. And my feet were still warm. So did I really lose anything? No. So, I mean, you looking at those intentions, yes, I get it. But, it still is like, I'm still just kind of like going, yeah, I do that. I do that. I am very controlling about very specific things of, this is how it's done.
Yeah. I don't like irrational rules. People, I like to break those rules, because I'm like, especially because I live in the UK, right? So I'm Canadian, like, so my rules set. Okay, now, but it's pretty Canadian. But and then in the UK there are all these rules, which is, as far as I can tell, tradition for tradition's sake. Like, this is how we've always done it. Yes, but it doesn't work like that anymore. Yes, but it's how we've always done it. And it's like, oh, this is not rational. And that makes me crazy. And
I have
that's
worked
made me break
places
it.
like that. I have worked places like that. Well, we do it this way because this is the way we've always done it. But why? Well, it's the way it's always been done. But why? This doesn't make sense. It really makes sense if you take this, you move it over here, and you do it this way, because you're not making as many steps then. And that's part of why you hired me.
Exactly. And that's what I do with people mentally. I'll sort of go, you have confidence in your work life, or you're a stage performer, whatever it is. But you want more confidence in your personal life. You have all these strategies. Let's take those and put them over here. And look, it works.
Exactly. And it does work. And that's like, that's my big thing, is that saying, hey, you know what, lifestyle engineer, all the tools that I learned as being an engineer, I've gone here, we can apply all this to your personal life. I mean, it's root cause analysis, and it's looking at it and going, okay, here we have a process map and the thought map. And we've talked about the thought map before, but you have that. And here it's continuous improvement. And you start with the stuff that you see and you just keep going. And
Yes.
and as far as improving a person, that's not really a thing. I mean, we're all great the way we are, but on the other hand, it's like there is this whole, I can develop myself into new skills, new ideas, new whatever, if I choose to.
Yes.
So all of that is there. And it's just, you always start with, hey, let's start with the low hanging fruit and do the easy part first. And then it'll be a whole lot easier to do the next level and to do the next level, if you just kind of take it that way.
Exactly. Exactly. And it is development that will ultimately change things, but it's not about changing who you are. It is just developing and growing. And that's the thing. When we're, I always say, when we're green, we grow. When we're ripe, we rot. And as soon as you're ripe and you just stay in your habits, then you just rot in them. You got to try new things.
I like new things for the most part. Sometimes not. Sometimes I do need a push, but for the most part, new things are all good.
I like your new podcast. This is fun.
I like it too. Thank you so much for being on it. I am like so excited because, it's kind of come full circle, where I started out with the whole interview thing. You were my first outside of, like interviewing for a job kind of interview person. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to fake it.
And it's been great. It's just
And,
been beautiful.
and now you're one of my first interviews on the podcast. So it's like, kind of full circle.
Yeah, it is full circle. Absolutely. Yeah, because I interviewed you before we even had a podcast on Confidence for Cabaret. And now, and now I'm on yours. I'm
I
so
know.
happy.
It's so cool. So thank you so much, Heather. Guys, thank Heather so much. Hopefully you guys learned something. As you can tell, we've been friends for a while. So we also kind of treaded that line between it's a podcast interview and here we're just having a friendly conversation, because it kind of delved that way for a while and we brought it back. It's all good. So let us know if you have any questions. We'll have information about Heather and Confidence Cabaret in the show notes too. So enjoy. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.